I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to Leadovation. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. This podcast is dedicated to the art and science of innovative leadership. Through insightful interviews with industry experts, I bring you cutting-edge strategies and experiences of innovative leadership, helping you think differently, act strategically, and achieve remarkable results. Join me as I provide insights and tools that empower you to make smarter decisions, forge meaningful relationships. Welcome to Leadovation. Why is it so hard working with people who are different from us? Even when we say we love diversity, on the surface, we appreciate different cultures, opinions, and backgrounds. But when it comes to the workplace, that difference can feel less like the spice of life and more like, well, friction. In this episode of Leadovation, I sit down with bestselling author and speaker Kelly McDonald, whose work focuses on helping us understand and lead people not like us. We dig into why working with people who think, act, and communicate differently isn't just uncomfortable, it's hardwired. And yet, as Kelly points out, diverse teams consistently outperform homogeneous ones. We uncover such topics as why trust, especially vulnerability-based trust, is the key to working through differences. What happens neurologically when we try to collaborate with someone whose style doesn't match ours. How phrases like, tell me more about that, can unlock better conversations, even when ideas clash. Why companies are shifting the language of DEI to the more timeless ideas of belonging and community, and what that means for culture. And how clear, simple language, not buzzword bingo, builds real trust inside teams. Kelly also shares a vivid story from post-COVID conferences that speaks to our deep human need for connection, and how that need still defines how we work together even today. So, if you've ever struggled to connect with a teammate, felt overwhelmed by the culture wars, or wondered how to lead people who aren't like you, this conversation is for you. This episode might just shift how you show up at work and with others. Kelly McDonald on the Leadovation podcast. Kelly.
Dean.
Nice to have you on the show. It's a delight. Your topic around working with people who are different than us is certainly something we can all deal with and all understand. And I know you've got some really good ideas, but I want to break it down. We all sort of know that we're all different, and I think, we all appreciate the differences, and anybody that travels knows that people are a little different than we are, whether it's the kind of foods we eat, whether it's our politics, whether it's whether we have kids or not. It's sort of the spice of life, right? It's our differences. We and I think, but why is it hard? Why do we, Kelly? Why do we have a hard time?
Why is it so hard?
Can't we all just kumbaya, get along? What's the
Right.
what? I know this is a really basic question, but I want to unpack it a little bit and put language around it so that we kind of know what's going inside of us subconsciously, consciously, neurologically, whatever's going on that says you are a friend, Kelly, or you are a foe.
I don't know if it's okay. I think that's a little extreme, Dean.
All right. I know that there's there's a process
on that.
Some people would say that that's the first line of defense, that we go friend or foe.
Right.
Can I trust you? Can I not trust you? And based on that, I go down a pathway relative to that original decision. But what do you think?
And to your point, actually, when you think about how Homo sapiens have existed all of these years together, we lived in tribes, right? Like as primitive peoples, we lived in tribes because with people who were like us, because it was safer. It meant community, it meant protection, and the whole community worked together to feed itself and, whatever. So it is primal, and it is something that's in us. And so it's not that we reject people who are not like us. It's that we have to work harder to understand them and get them. Okay. And so it's like when you meet somebody and you're just clicking with somebody and everything is falling into place and the conversation is effortless and you see things the same way. That's a beautiful thing. But then you might meet somebody who has completely different viewpoints. They grew up in a very different kind of family environment or in a different part of the world or whatever. And everything feels harder, not worse, just harder. Okay. I think that that's a really important distinction to make, is that one is not good and the other is bad. It's just harder. And a lot of us don't like to do hard things, right? It's easier to work with people who are just like us.
Well, I heard something. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I heard that the human brain, although it's only a certain small percentage of the total weight of our body, it consumes something like 20% of all of our calories, which blows me away. And I understand that the brain is needing to choose which things to pay attention to and which things not, because we're being inundated by so much, and our operating system of the brain cannot ingest the amount of data that's coming at us. It's just impossible. Otherwise, we'd probably be, in a puddle somewhere, like sucking our thumb, being completely insane. It would just be not possible. But I guess what it comes down to it is, is the ability to work with people different from us the result of us finding something that is similar through digging, asking questions, being open? Or can we take delight in working with people and what we appreciate is the difference?
Right.
I mean, this is a small cutting hairs or splitting hairs, but I am curious about it because I see people sometimes and be with them and go like, boy, you're really different. And then we start talking and we find something like,
of course,
oh, you are like me because you went to the same place I went to high school or whatever, right? So is it the commonalities that we find in each other that we like, or is it the fact that we can still go, man, you're still really different, but I love that about you?
Both things are true. What is the easiest in the beginning is the commonalities, right? I go to a lot of speaking engagements. I have to go to the cocktail party the night before and schmooze with people that don't know me and I don't know them. And so the conversation tends to be pretty superficial, you know. And if I say I live in Denver, then it becomes like, do you follow the Broncos? And what I find is people are looking for the easy way into a conversation. They're not saying, what's the most challenging thing you've ever faced, Kelly? They're starting with the softballs, like you said, which is, I went to Denver last year. It was great. My family and I went skiing. Or, we try to find those things because that's the easy thing to do. And that's the point at which we can bond over something, however superficial or minor it might be. However, while working with people who are different from us and interacting with people who are different from us can be challenging, study after study after study after study, there's really never been one that doesn't show this. Study after study shows that at work, people enjoy a diverse workforce. Again, it might be a little harder to kind of like get your feet on the ground there and learn how to do it, but they enjoy it. And they enjoy it because it's more interesting. And it's more interesting because it's different, I mean, if you just surround yourself with people who are just like you, to your point, went to the same high school, never left the same small hometown, that might be easy, but it's not very stimulating. And it is those fresh perspectives and other people's viewpoints that make us go, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. And when you think about people who travel, you started this by saying like traveling. I find it interesting that most people love to travel because they like to see different things and meet different people and eat different foods and try, different cultures and stuff. They don't go, you know what? I live in Chicago and I'm going to go to Cleveland on my vacation. We don't do that. We go someplace different. We go to Paris, we go to Cabo, we go wherever, even if it's just Anchorage, Alaska. But the point is, the working with somebody, interacting with somebody who's different from you takes more effort. It does. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But it produces a better outcome at work and people like it. And in fact, a especially young people, right? Young people especially, but that is a major powerhouse when it comes to a company's culture and recruiting. And that's what younger workers say that they want, is they don't want to work at, some sort of, automatonic place where everybody is just sort of the same. They're all white men. They all went to Ivy League schools or whatever. They're looking for that diversity of like, who am I going to eat lunch with, and what's going to be interesting and who am I going to learn from?
Okay, so I totally agree with you on that. The travel that I've had, I've been just absolutely delighted, and I think that's the reason why my wife and I love the travel, is to see and hear and look and be around differences. I love that. I remember we were over at, I think it was some really nice hotel in Rome. We noticed this guy come up to the bar and he ordered like an American beer, and I thought like, oh man, what a waste! You should get something that's local, right? Well, that's just my value system. I mean, his is fine, whatever it is. Well, why would you order a Bud Light? Do something else. Do a, I don't know, Aperol Spritz or something. I don't know.
Right.
But
Prosecco.
But we can't. So this is what I get. I think about this a lot because I think that's one reason why I was wanted to talk with you, because I look at it from different perspectives. You could say men, women, conservative, liberal, old, young, all sorts of different things, right? But I look at it also from style of, if you go into DISC, you know, social agility, I'm an analytical, you're an expressive, we're different. And I start to really dig into this, and I think, do we begin to accept or partner with people who are different because we have found that difference has somehow changed us, our perspective, and that we create maybe some agreements or some agreements, like we agree on something. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize, because of talking to you, Callie, now I now agree with you on something, and I am now bonded with you because of the fact that we both agree on something.
Right.
Versus, Callie, I understand you, but I don't agree with you, and I still find you fascinating. Mm-hmm. Talk about that.
Okay. So first of all, we don't have to agree to respect each other's viewpoints and to get along. And if you look at, honestly, any two people, whether they're just two people who are at work together, a couple, whatever, they don't always agree, but that doesn't mean that there's not deep respect and companionship and getting alongness, if that's a word, just the ability to get along and to compromise and to learn. And that's, I think, a huge benefit. But you bring up an interesting point that nobody's ever asked me before, which is, again, do I connect with you because we agree? Or do I connect with you because I like you even though we don't agree, etc.? And I think all of those things can be true. No one situation is something that I can put a label on it, Dean, and go, okay, here's how it works. But what I will tell you is that, kind of, again, if we come back to why this is important at work, there's a study, and I can tell you about it, that shows that working with people who are different from us, whatever the us is harder. Okay, that's not in our minds. It actually is harder. We have to work a little harder on communication and on leaning into the different perspectives and things like that. It feels harder because it is harder, but it produces a better outcome, like a statistical percentage of gain in outcome. And so from a business standpoint, that's when I'm talking to leaders about this, and I go, okay, if you're working with somebody who's not like you and it feels really hard, you're not doing it wrong and you're not crazy, you're not off base. It is hard. Most of us don't like to do hard things. We'd rather take the easy way, whether we're cognating on that or not. But it produces a better outcome. And so I think that's an important point, because when you find yourself, when your viewers and listeners find yourself working with somebody who's not like them, and you're like, my gosh, this is so hard. It's like pushing the elephant up the stairs. You're not doing it wrong. You're not off base. It's hard. That's why most people don't like to do it. But if you hang in there, you are going to get to a better result. And that's what really matters at work. And this has been proven over and over, is that diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams. And if you think
Totally.
about technology is one of those, industries, tech, where that diversity of thought is like what they hire for, right? Like, I want somebody who can create new ideas, create new products, create new ways and methods. These things don't exist till somebody creates them. So we need that person who can think that way. And a lot of times the friction of those tech teams when they're coming up with a new product or service or something is like World War III. But they come out with this incredible product.
So you're creating now. I love where you're going with this, and it makes me think that in order for us to create that kind of beautiful creative friction of ideas, like you mentioned the tech industry and so forth. And I'm thinking about an author that I once saw speak over at Harvard named Amy Edmondson, and she talks about psychological safety, and this is sort of the DNA for what we're talking about. I think that if you don't have trust, this is my point of view, tell me if you agree, in a social system, this is not going to work because I will always revert back to what's comfortable. But if I trust you, Kelly, however we got there, which maybe we got there because we both went to the same high school, right? But however we got there, then I'm willing to be in uncomfortable, challenging, work-related, workable, feels like work, conversations with you. But without the trust, forget about it.
And mic drop.
Mic drop. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us today on Lead Ovation Podcast. I think we've had a nice conversation with Kelly. We are all done.
It's so funny because, I'm a speaker, and I'm usually given about 1 hour on stage as a keynote to do a presentation on how to work with and lead people not like you. And so I go through 8 tactics. And the very first one, how do I work with you? The very first one is building trust. And those are like really easy words to say, but it doesn't just fall together like that. And so I talk about there's 2 ways. Well, first of all, there's 2 kinds of trust. Social psychologists have identified that there's not one kind, there's 2. The first is called common trust. Common trust does not have to be earned. We give it to people automatically every day, all day long. You can't think about this or your head would explode. It's the kind of trust that when you're driving down the road, you have to trust that the person on the other side of that median is not going to cross the median or cross the center line and hit you head on. You don't know who they are. You don't know if they're a distracted driver or not. You have no choice but to put your faith in the universe. If you go to a restaurant and you have dinner, you have to trust that the chef didn't poison you. I'm going to get on a plane and fly tomorrow. You just got off the plane. Every day when we fly, we have to trust that our pilots are well-trained and well-rested. I mean, like, we have no choice in this, so you can't think about that. That's called common trust. It doesn't have to be earned. But the kind of trust that great teams have and leaders have is what's called vulnerability trust. And vulnerability trust absolutely has to be earned, and it has to be cultivated, and it has to be reciprocated. So if you're the leader, you can't say to your people, hey, trust me, if you don't trust them back. And the way that you cultivate vulnerability trust is 2 ways. Number 1 is talk straight, be honest, even when it's hard. The best way to foster trust is for me to give you the respect and the acknowledgement that you're an adult and not a baby, and that you can handle difficult truth, right? So if I sit down with you and I say, Dean, I need to talk to you today at 1 o'clock. I have some difficult news to share. Number 1, you're braced. It's not going to be fun, whatever we're going to talk about. Number 2, I'm respecting you, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to say, Dean, sadly, we have to close the San Diego office, and that means that 60 people are going to be out of work or placed elsewhere. Whatever it is, okay? But the best leaders are the ones who rip that Band-Aid off pretty quickly and go straight for it, and they don't dodge around it. They don't go, well, if it were up to me, Dean, I wouldn't have done it this way, but what can you say about, the powers that be upstairs? People hate that. And when we're adults, and we can handle the truth, even difficult truth, especially at work, what we cannot handle is the runaround. So be a leader and just sit down with your people and talk straight and be honest and say, that was a great job in there. Or, you know what? I watched you strike out in there. What happened, Dean? You were so prepared for this meeting. What happened? You folded like a chair. So that's the first part about fostering trust. And the second part is using simple language. And the example that I give when I'm doing this on stage is I talk about how I find it interesting that some of the largest companies in the world do not resort to business buzzword bingo when they have a message to get across and communicate.
Good alliteration, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Business buzzword bingo.
You know
That's
what
good.
I'm talking about when they start.
I get it. That's good.
Oh my
I
gosh,
like that.
yeah, nauseating.
Better trademark that.
But they resort to simple language. And the example that I give is a real meeting that I was in years ago. Toyota was my client, and Toyota will tell you that they don't sell cars and trucks. They make cars and trucks. Dealers sell cars and trucks. So they're like this with their dealer body, right, to be successful. They were having a truck problem. Truck sales were off. When truck sales are off, everything is off because those are the highest gross profit vehicles. And you can't make up with Corollas and Camrys what you're missing on trucks. So they called together the top 40 truck dealers in the country. I was at this meeting, and it went down exactly like this. It's one of the most high-level meetings I've ever been at. The senior VP of sales walked into the room, thanked these top dealers for coming, and then simply said, "We can't hit our sales numbers unless we hit our truck numbers." Now, you don't have to be an automotive professional to understand exactly what the problem is because it's so clear. So the dealers were like, all right. And then they took it one step further, and that person said, "So what do you need from us to help you sell more trucks?" The dealers put their heads together for 20 minutes, came up with a list of stuff. That meeting had no PowerPoint, no graphs, no charts. That whole meeting went down with two very simple things. We can't hit our sales numbers unless we hit our truck numbers. So what do you need from us to help you sell more trucks? Now, why does that fall into trust? Because when you speak that clearly and simply, there's nothing to hide behind. Nobody walks out of a meeting like that going, "I wonder what he meant by that. What do you think he was trying to say?" You know, like there's nothing that doesn't foster trust about that. So we can build that trust through just, giving people the straight scoop, good, bad, or ugly, and then also using simple language. That's what moves the ball down the field faster. There's a story about Steve Jobs when he was still alive and some product at Apple that was in development for like 2.5 years. And it was just going back and forth. And, he would throw it back at the development team and they would refine it and they would, show it to him again. And then finally, when it was ready, Steve sent an email to that team and it had one word on it. And that email said, "Go." I don't think anybody is going to misunderstand what the word "go" means. Like, go, green light, right? So here's one of the largest companies in the world with one of the most layered organizations. And when he wanted them to go, he just told them to go. Go. Hit it.
Clear language. Simple.
Yeah. So that's where the trust comes in. I mean, I just think that's fundamental to your point. You can't really work effectively with people if you don't trust them. So the differences can be vast. But if I trust you and you trust me, we're going to be just fine.
So you're saying that the trust, obviously, I just want to call this out, can be developed even if we're different.
Totally.
Right? Even
That's
if I don't have a connection with you, like we didn't go to high school together, we don't have any kind of common things we can talk. I don't know anything about Denver, right? I don't even like football, whatever. But we can create that sense of trust when it comes to just the clear language and being articulate and not beating around the bush. And
it can start with clear language in the getting to know you phase. If you and I were on the same team, we didn't know each other, we got to work on this project together. I don't know you. You could be a jerk. You could be a great guy. I don't know. And same here. And so I might sit down with you and I might say, "Tell me about yourself, Dean." I love "tell me about yourself" when you're working with somebody who's different, whatever that different might be, because it allows that other person to tell you what they think is important. So they might start with something like, "Well, I've been here 8 years and I've never seen this place being such a you-know-what show." Or they might say something like, I'm new to the team. I was actually over in this department and now I'm new to this team. And I got to tell you, I'm getting up to speed, but the point is it lets the other person drive, and have control of that conversation. Tell me about yourself is a great opener when you're working with somebody who might not be like you, because they'll tell you what they think is important.
Kelly, do you feel like we're getting better at this or worse at this as AI starts to pick up speed?
I think we're getting better. I do, but I think I do, because I think people are actually paying more attention to this in general. I mean, companies, when they are recruiting, are talking about their culture and the breadth of experience that they have and the breadth of experiences that their employees have and stuff like that. They know that this is a powerful tool. AI plays a role. I don't want it to be an outsized role, but it plays a role in all of this. But AI is not going to build bridges between us. That's a people to people thing. At the end of the day, technology and AI, taking over does not scare me at all, because we're still social creatures and we need each other and we want each other. And so and when we can harness AI to help us foster connection between us, I think that's going to be great. I don't think that's AI's role right now that I've seen.
No, it's funny. It's interesting you say that. I think that because of AI, we have a deeper hunger for social connections in some ways.
Yes.
It's almost like after COVID, I noticed when we started coming back for the first time, it's like people were just a little awkward. Like, I don't know how to have a conversation with a person when I don't have
We
a
lost
box
that
around their
ability.
head. It's like, who are you? There's been some activities I've done with certain teams that would involve touch, right? You might have some minor amount of touch. Well, I remember one person or two people in this one particular team says, I would have been fine with this 3 years ago, but today I'm not.
Today I'm not.
And
Exactly.
so
On the other hand,
yeah, go ahead.
conversely, the very first speaking engagement that I had after COVID, okay, so like I stayed home for a year and a half or 2 years. All conferences were canceled and stuff. So the very first engagement, I'm never going to forget this. It was in Nashville at the Opryland Hotel. And I'm walking to the cocktail party that night. I'm walking down this long hallway. If you've ever been there, oh my gosh, the place is huge.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And it was a janitorial supply conference. So it's a bunch of men. I mean, seriously, like 99% of the audience is men. And they all know each other because they're in this industry. And so, and these are like the janitorial supply companies that supply airports and stadiums and hospitals and big stuff. I turned the corner to go to this cocktail party and I saw men doing something I've never seen men doing before. They were all, doing what I call the bro hug, right? So it's like if I saw you and I was like, Dean, bat, bat, I pat you on the back, right? And then that's fine. I see the bro hug all the time from guys who haven't seen each other in a while. And then as they stood there talking to each other, they kept touching each other on the arm. They kept touching each other on the shoulder over and over and over. And I was like, I have never seen men touch each other just to make a point, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this means that we need to be together and we need to actually touch each other. Like we were all so starved for human connection that I saw that at that conference, and I've never seen it since.
Yeah.
It was a moment in time, but it was so clear to me that all these guys, they couldn't just throw their arms around each other enough, or just keep touching their shoulder to make a point when they were talking.
Yeah.
It was remarkable.
It's almost like if you were on a 3-week vacation, backpacking with a bunch of people. After a while, you stop doing that because you've got all this luxury of time. But if you've only got a 2-day conference,
right,
you want to soak it in, because you won't see these people for another year.
And they hadn't seen each other for 3 years.
Yeah, no, I know what you're.
3 years. It was like they missed each other,
I remember
and they missed being together. It was a very special event. I'm never going to forget it.
I know what you mean. I had a company out of Minneapolis, and they got together, and we did about 50 people that came together right after COVID. It was a freaking barn burner.
Yeah.
But mostly because it was just this release of energy and the love that everybody had for each other. My job was really easy. I was just kind of corralling it in the right direction. They had all the energy that women would ever want because they just missed each other.
Yeah.
And I think that we miss each other all the time. I think we are constantly missing each other. We are missing ourselves. We're missing our own connection with ourselves. We're missing our connection with other people. And
let's
I think
talk about that for a second.
Okay, all right, great, bring it.
Sorry to interrupt you, but
No.
Companies that allowed their people to work from home for the last few years, they're bringing people back to the office. I'm sure you've read about this. There was, Goldman Sachs was one of the first to insist, and I think they just like in the last week say that their employees now need to be in the office 4 days a week. So they brought it back, starting with like 1 or 2, because this again has been studied and proven that when people are together, collaboration fosters ideas foster good business practices, and the business moves forward. Teams and companies and employees are better together. That's been proven now. So whether people like it or not is a whole other thing. But the reason these companies are insisting on 3 days in the office, 4 days in the office, is because they're not trying to be punitive. It's because it actually benefits everything.
I totally agree. And notwithstanding, I'm sure that they wanted to finally fill up their business offices because they've been laid to rest and nobody's in there. And if we're going to be paying this rent, we might as well put some people in there and get some value out of it. Well, that's aside, but I agree with you on that. I would much rather meet with somebody face to face versus over Zoom or over WebEx and so forth. But I do think that there are style differences with respect to people that make it difficult for us to come together and to work with those who are different from us. So it may not be that you're Republican and I'm Democrat or what have you, but maybe because that you are just much more expressive in the way you are as a human being than I'm much more pensive and considering all the thoughts before I even say anything. So there's those sort of things. And I want to bring back something that you said earlier too, is like you doing something that is hard work. There are those internal alarm bells that go off and go, danger, danger, Will Robinson, you're doing something that doesn't feel right. I'm giving you a queasy stomach. I'm making you sweat a little bit or I'm making you feel uncomfortable. That's not necessarily, that's not necessarily the indication that you shouldn't do this.
Right.
You're literally, in some ways, I think from a neurological standpoint, you're probably developing some neural pathways in your noggin that's never been done before or hasn't been done very often, which is why it takes extra energy to push through that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's great. Go ahead.
Well, just in the spirit of collaboration, then that's when teams, because one of the things that people tell me is, I don't have a problem working with somebody who's different than me. I get the big picture. I understand the value of the perspectives and blah, blah, blah. But I'm trying to actually work with them and collaborate. And I don't know how to do that effectively because whatever I say seems to land wrong, and they shut down or they bully me and they push through or whatever. And so I think there are some very basic, soft skills and communication skills that we need to employ when we are working with people who are not like us. So like an example of that would be, let's say you bring me an idea and that idea is deeply flawed. Okay. It's really flawed. It's not going to fly. We don't have the time. We don't have the budget. We don't have the manpower team. That's just the way it is. It's never going to fly, but you're all excited about it. Okay. So I can either piss in your Wheaties, and you're going to not come up with any new ideas now because you're devastated. Or I can say, tell me more about that. How did you come up with that? Because if we can get people talking about, tell me more about that. How did you come up with that? The idea itself may be flawed, but the thinking behind it could be gold. You just don't know. Yeah. And so if I can get you talking, and tone matters, right? Because there's a huge difference between, how did you come up with that, Dean? And how did you come up with that?
Dean? One's a statement, one's a question. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think those are the kind of the basic skills that people don't know how when they butt heads like that. When you present me with an idea, I know it's not going to work. I don't want to be the bad guy and go, well, that's not going to work, Dean. And everybody here knows it,
Right.
But how do I still continue to draw the best out of you and maybe do a little bit of course correction here and say, tell me more about that? Because if you start talking to me about how you came up with this, that could end up leading in a fantastic direction. But if I just go, that's not going to work. We tried that last year and it didn't work. Plus, we don't have the budget for that this year either.
Yeah.
Plus, Marjorie quit, and so we're down a person. Whatever.
Right.
So I just think it's literally teaching people some scripts, if you will, or some phrases that kind of continue to move the ball down the field. That's all we're after.
Yep.
Is just continuing the conversation.
You make me think of two things. One is the power of a good question begets the power of a good answer. So vague questions create vague answers. Really not intense, but well thought out questions can also inspire some great discussion. And the other thought that you made me think about was this old improvisational technique that maybe many of you as well have heard of, is the yes and. Meaning instead of saying, no, that never works, we'd say yes, and let me add on to that. It doesn't mean that we don't disagree with people's ideas, but in the ideation stage or the brainstorming stage, we want more ideas versus shutting down the stream of that. I have a question for you. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to phrase this, but I was doing some work. I've got one of our clients is a large nonprofit, and under our current political situation, funding for some of these nonprofits just not going to happen if you are
Right.
promoting diversity, equity, inclusion. It's just no
Yep.
longer popular,
Yep.
and we're not even allowed to even use certain words, hence
Right.
having a target on our back and funding being potentially
Right.
disruptive. So now DEI is no longer the fashion, right? We no
Right.
longer use
It's
it
a dirty
as
word.
it's a dirty word, right?
Mhm.
My question is this, and I'm trying to come up with it, but are we missing out on something by not having DEI, regardless of whether or not the administration wants to support it?
Right.
Or are we returning back to the roots, which is ubiquitous, that we're still talking about the same thing? Working with people who are different,
Right.
whether they be male, female, of a different color,
Racial,
different sexual
ethnic.
orientation, whatever it is.
Right.
Are we finding a common language that no longer has these terms
Yep.
that has been around since probably George Floyd, around that period of time, that we're returning back to something that is timeless and that's where we should be? Or are we missing something by the fact that we don't have these words to define a specific kind of way to work with people who are different? What's your take on that?
Well, of course, I have a take on this since I've been talking about this for 24 years, long
Yeah,
before.
I figured you would.
Yeah, I mean, long before the phrase DEI ever even existed, I was writing books and talking about people not like you, which is the same thing, right?
Right.
So yes, DEI is now a verboten word. Okay, we're going to put that on the shelf. It's just not helping the conversations right now, and in fact, it's hurting the conversations with many people. I will tell you that the professionals in the industry, including myself, but like at universities and hospitals and places that actually work with everybody, right, and employ everybody and educate everybody, is nobody's taking their foot off the pedal on this. The language is changing. And a friend of mine actually even said it in a school, she works in a school system, and she said, words may change, but the work continues. And so the words, just for your audience, that I can tell you that are really getting traction and that actually put people more at ease, because I think so many people, you say DEI and they think racial, ethnic diversity, and then they start to go to things like diversity hires and all that baggage that's associated with it, right?
Right.
So what the words are now that are working and that companies and organizations are changing to are belonging and community. Because there's not a business organization in the world that will say, we don't value belonging. Everybody belongs at this company. If we hired you, it's because you belong, right? And your talents belong and your skill set belongs. I defy anybody to pick that one apart, right? So
which is also, you could have said those two words, belonging, community, 50 years ago.
Absolutely.
And they still would have resonated.
Exactly. And then the other thing is community, because community is all encompassing. It encompasses the entity of the employer, right? There's a community of people who work for that company, and all of its associated suppliers and vendors and partners and things like that. Also the community that they serve, whether that's a client community or an actual community, where they're in a town or so these are the words that are getting good traction. And you can call it whatever you want to call it, but I really did like what my friend said when she said the words are changing, but the work continues. I mean, so nobody is all of a sudden going, wow, we don't really want to be inclusive. We don't really want, different perspectives. Nobody's saying that in business. They know the value of this. It's just that that phrase, DEI, has become a dirty phrase. And they know that there's nothing good that can come with that.
That's a very practical corporate side of it, and I get it. And and quite frankly, I subscribe to a lot of what you just said. I think that's right on. And I'm trying to come at this with all different angles, whether I subscribe to it or not. So let's just say, for a while, I was a person who had that definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion seemed to be related to me because of maybe my color of my skin, because of my sex, my sexual orientation. Maybe I transitioned, maybe I didn't, whatever, right? Let's just say that's the case. And all of a sudden DEI comes out And again, I am not in that particular population, so it's hard for me to speak to it, but I'm going to imagine it,
Let's
right?
go there. Yeah.
Let's just say that, all right, I've got these words that seem to be protective of my interests, and I feel
Yeah.
heard, right?
Yeah.
And all of a
I feel
sudden,
seen and heard.
DEI is no longer the words of the day.
Right.
Now we're being replaced with community and with belonging. Is that population, these people who used to feel the benefit of DEI, feeling forgotten,
I
feeling
don't think so.
disenfranchised? Are we as corporations doing a good enough job to be able to continue the work even though the word is different? What's
Yeah.
your sense?
I think that's a really good question. My sense is that people who are people who had an umbrella of DEI-ness over them, okay, I don't think they feel disenfranchised. What I would say, if I had to put an emotion on it from the people that I've talked to, is they feel disappointed and maybe sad that something like that has come to sort of try to unravel all the good that's been done and all that we've learned about this, okay? Because we have learned and it's been studied and it's been proven. So this is not, to your point, let's hold hands and sing "We Are the World." This is not that. Business doesn't run on that. Business runs on performance. Let's never forget that, okay?
Right.
So they are sad by the fact that we can get so stuck on something that has actually been proven to be beneficial that, now it's a dirty word. Okay, whatever. They kind of roll their eyes at it, really, is what it is. But when you start talking about belonging and community, they still feel that protective layer. They're like, okay, you haven't sold your soul to the devil. You're still the same company with the same values. It's just that we are all trying to navigate this, and this is the most productive way to navigate it, okay? And so I feel that a lot of companies that have changed their language around that have absolutely not changed their values or their intention or their work. They're just making it easier to continue to move the ball down the field because the other words are a distraction right now. Now, what I will tell you is what is disappointing in the extreme is when companies who said that they valued DEI put a stake in the ground on that and then changed their mind. I did a post just a couple weeks ago that said values should not be situational.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a little too convenient. If you value this one day, but then not really.
Well,
That's
we're just
not-
following the polls. What does the data say that's important
Right.
now? So we're going to change our values to reflect that.
Right. That to me
Versus-
seems very disingenuous. That is
Yes.
not something I can trust. When you talk
Right.
about trust, that is not
Correct.
something I can trust. And so the companies that truly have always believed in DEI before, and DEI existed before there was ever that label on it. At first it was a good label. Now it's a bad label.
Right.
But long before that, there were companies that were incredibly supportive of diverse perspectives and diverse backgrounds and diverse talents, not just the color of your skin or the shape of your eyes or how old you are or whatever. And so those values are not situational, and those values are unchanging, but the language is changing because it has to change. And that's just where we are. And I think
Yes.
part of business is accepting this is the world we live in right now. So how are we going to continue to be the best and move the ball down the field and progress and thrive in this new environment? Because these are macro trends on us.
We may need to do another conversation of this, but my next question has to do with, should businesses be in the business of social change?
I think
You said that we are, don't forget, we are about performance, right?
Right.
So that's what made me kind of think about that. Do we sometimes take on, as a business owner, large or small, the added responsibility for social change? Should that be a part of who we are? Should we take these sort of stands on these larger issues, or not? If you were to go back to what is the common language we're using right now, one could say that's ubiquitous. That would be something that most companies for a long, long time and into the future would agree with.
Right.
And sometimes we might focus in on a particular area by changing the words to DEI or whatever it might be. Should we do that? Is that, in a sense, responding to the external requirements of the day, the political landscape, and then we're now going to make our company aligned to that? Or should we just be, no, these are our values. They are consistent. They're going to be that way forever. And it is high enough and consistent enough that everybody is going to be included and everybody is part of our community. Am I making sense on this?
You are. You are. That's a complex question. I think the best companies are going to follow their hearts, and regarding social change, they're going to do what also fits with their brand, their product, and why they exist. Okay. So, for example, Patagonia. I mean, I live in Denver, so everybody's got
right. Yeah, that's your headquarters, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but also just everybody's got nice jackets and nice gear because we need them.
Isn't their motto? I was just at a store yesterday down in Newport, California. It was a Patagonia store. Their tagline was something about changing the planet or protecting the planet. Very social impact.
Absolutely. Okay, because if you're an outdoor company,
yeah,
don't you care about the outdoors? You know, and so,
right.
So I saw this great ad a while ago, and it had one of their nice jackets on it and said, "Don't buy this jacket." Intriguing headline, right? So I was like, "Oh, okay. Like I got to read more." And it basically said, if your Patagonia jacket has a rip in it, or is coming apart or something because you've worn it to death out in the weather, right? Don't buy a new jacket. Send it to us, and we'll repair your jacket and send it back to you at no charge. Okay, so they'll repair it because they're like, we don't need more perfectly good jackets that just have a little tear at the elbow sitting in a landfill, right? And so it's true to who they are, it's true to their values, and it's about social change. And they're actually putting out there, don't buy a new jacket. I was so impressed by that, just like walk the walk, man. If you're going to be an outdoor company, then...
Yeah, and of course there's a certain part, I'm not saying it in this example, it makes me think about some of it becomes spin.
Oh,
it's
for
just,
sure.
It's just good marketing.
From it. It was brilliant. It was
it's
brilliant,
great.
But it was also true. It was also
totally true. I remember once being in a hotel. This was like, I don't know, some sort of environmental trend was happening in the world. And of course, we were trying to save water. So now all of a sudden, we're not going to clean your towels unless you tell us to, because we are going to be helping saving the planet. Like, we're like, well, that was a good way of attaching it to a social issue. But it doesn't really feel authentic, though. That was my problem. It's like, are you going to change your policies and link up to some sort of social issue because that's the social issue of the day? Now, my point of view is you do good work, you treat people well, you have ubiquitous, long-standing values that stand the test of time because it's uplifting, it's consistent. And then the political changes and the weathers will happen. But they are almost a smaller piece of this larger, consistent message of your values that you stand by. And I think it's more authentic. That's just my point of view.
Well, I spend 150 nights a year on the road too, so I know exactly what you're talking about with the laundry thing. But then it actually was sort of underscoring this when those same hotels, and it's all of them now, did away with the little shampoo bottles and stuff.
Right.
Now they have the ones mounted on the wall in the shower, right, that are refillable or whatever. Not only are they more, obviously more cost effective or whatever, but also we don't need 7 billion little plastic bottles from a one-use, thing or whatever. I was super disappointed because I like to put those in my guest bathrooms. And now
you have to take them home with you, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, it made me kind of go, okay, so they are... It started with the towels and the bedding or whatever, and now it's this, and I'm on board with that. I'm fine with that, And so I think it is about that consistency and that your values shouldn't be situational. That's what I would leave your audience. Right. Your audience, your values should not be situational. You don't plug in your values.
That's where I'm going with. You said it brilliantly. That's what I'm going for. Yeah. So how do we tie this back to working with people that are difficult to work with? Is there a way to tie? I know that. I'm just trying to bring us back to this conversation.
There's a little loop of humor. Well, the people who are difficult to work with, technically, I would say the reason that they're difficult to work with is because we don't get them, and they typically don't get us. Yeah. We don't see eye to eye, and we don't maybe have the same way of communicating or solving problems and stuff. It's not that they're bad people. Yeah. They're just different from us, And so if you're an extreme introvert and I'm an extreme extrovert, we are going to rub each other the wrong way. We are.
Right.
Because I don't know how to be an introvert. I don't know how to break through that barrier. And same with you. You don't know how to talk to me. And so what we have to do is just, lean into those differences and go, okay, Dean, tell me about what you're working on. What's the big obstacle? What's the biggest problem you're trying to solve this week? Break it into bite-sized pieces. You are not going to move, that elephant up the stairs in one push. If you start with the little things that get somebody talking to you about their real challenges at work, their life, their problems and stuff, then you can just be like, how can I help you? Is there a way I can help you? What do you need from me? I mean, it's about asking the questions, not an interview, not grilling somebody like they're down in the police station, but asking those questions that get somebody to talk about what is on the table. And we're talking about work. So we don't need to talk about your religion and your, your faith and your views and all this kind of stuff. We can just talk about, Dean, what's on your desk this week? What's the one thing you have got to move forward on this week and move, and how can I help you with that? And or even like, how's that going? Because he might, Dean might say, it's going pretty well. Okay, really? What's the biggest win that you've had? I mean, just start with the softballs and the easy things.
So the theme that
you don't like,
go ahead.
Remember this. You don't have to like them. Okay, you don't have to like them. I show examples in my presentations of high-performing teams where there's no way that everybody on that team could like each other. You take an NFL team. The average NFL team employs over 1,400 people. Do you think they all like each other? No way. But when they get out there, they have a job to do, and they do it. The military. You think everybody in a troop or a squadron or whatever likes each other? No way. But when they get out there, they have a job to do. So the example that I'll use when I'm speaking is I'll pick somebody from the audience like you, and I'll say, Dean, you and I don't like each other. Okay, never have. Never will, probably. We just rub each other the wrong way. Do you think that you and I could sit down and do a budget forecast? And inevitably that person goes, yes. And I go, right. Because it's a task. I don't have to have feelings about it, okay? I can just sit down with you for an hour and we can knock through what we have to knock through on this budget forecast. We don't have to like each other in order to be effective. And I think that's a really important thing because a lot of companies in their culture really try to foster this whole, like, we're a family, we love each other.
Yeah.
Yes. There's going to be a lot of people in that family who are really broken.
Yeah.
And you're not going to like them, but that doesn't mean you can't be effective. You do have to be professional. You do have to be respectful at all times, of course, but nobody says you got to like everybody.
I think you hit upon something, and I know we got to close off this conversation here, but that we have in our paradigm of what work should be is the place to go and do some good things, get paid well, and meet some new friends.
And have fun.
And have fun, right?
Have fun.
And I've been a big proponent of that. I mean, like Tony Hsieh, Delivering Happiness, and all the other books out there. And, the Gallup 12, about 7 out of those 12 were all about developing friendships, relationships with. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. If it happens, it happens. But let's not make that the reason why we're going to work. Yeah. Well, Kelly, like I said, to finalize this conversation by this. How can people follow you and talk about your latest book?
Okay, so I just happen to have it here, Dean.
Oh, how convenient.
Oh, boy. How to work with and lead people not like you. Look at how skinny this book is. It's 130 pages, and I'm told I write the way that I speak. So it's a fast and easy read because you know what? We're all busy. That's available wherever books are sold, online, in stores. And follow me. LinkedIn is my preferred business following format. And so that's Kelly C as in cat, McDonald, Kelly C. McDonald on LinkedIn. Otherwise, there's 20,000 bazillion Kelly McDonalds. Or you can put in Kelly McDonald Denver. And I'll come
because I was wondering, I was going to try to find you. Like, there's no way I'm going to find Kelly McDonald, but Kelly C. McDonald.
Like David Smith or something.
Yeah, like...
Yeah.
Got it.
So that's the best way to connect with me. And I pretty much accept all connection requests. And so I love to be connected with people.
Well, Kelly, it's been really nice to talk to you. You're a delightful, sharp, clear, driven, experienced speaker and coach, and I really do appreciate your time and your energy. Keep up the good work, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to Leadervation with Dean Newlund. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com, or check the show notes. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. Transform your leadership success with Leadervation.